Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. This is the 3-Month Vacation. I'm Sean D'Souza. When I was growing up in Mumbai, India, I thought that pizza was sweet. No one I knew had ever eaten a pizza, and all the references to pizza were from Archie comics. Archie, and especially Jughead, always seemed to be eating a pizza. And for some reason, I associated pizza as a sort of candy or a sweet dish. So I had this disconnect between what was reality and what I perceived to be true. So imagine my surprise when I ate pizza for the first time when I was 20. Now, I sense a similar surprise when I talk about how I write an article. Every time I talk about article writing, clients are usually taken aback. It's almost like they're experiencing this disconnect between what they perceive to be true and the reality. Now, you may not know this, but I turn out about 3,000 to 4,000 words of fresh content every week, and I do all of this writing in between cooking and painting and all the other activities. So how do I write an article? Is it really an article writing gene? Well, it can't be a gene because I struggle like everybody else. I'd take 2 working days to write an article back in the year 2000. Today, I can complete an 800-word article in about 45 minutes. So what's changed? Strangely, it's got nothing to do with article writing itself and a lot to do with management, the management of my energy. So that's really what we're going to cover today. We're going to look at energy in your article writing. And we're going to cover 3 topics as always. The first topic is putting space between activities. The second topic is using a timer. And the third is to never research when writing this article. Now, this is a pretty long article and we might split it up into 2 or even 3 parts. But let's start out with the first part, which is putting space between activities. So here's how I cook a meal. I get fresh vegetables and ingredients from Huckleberry. That's the organic grocery store which is up the road. Then I do nothing. Later in the day, I will take those ingredients, I will assemble them, and then I will leave them alone. So I'm going through a second bout of nothingness. Finally, when I'm ready to cook, several hours may have gone by. But then cooking is quick and painless and the dish is extremely tasty. It's my method of conserving energy. To me, energy is what allows me to write so much. And the best way to expend energy is to do everything all at once. So a rookie writer will sit down, try to dream up the idea for the article, then try to write, then try to edit, and get very frustrated on a consistent basis. Instead, what you should do is do as little as possible. So here's how I go about my writing. I write down a topic, or if I'm very prolific, I'll write down several topics. Then, before the idea slips away, I will write down 3 subtopics. So let's take this article for instance. The topic is how I conserve energy when I'm writing, and the subtopics were about putting space between activities, using a timer, and to never research when writing the article. So what I've done so far is I've just written the topic, I've written the subtopics, and then I do nothing. I'm allowing my brain to take a well-deserved rest. And it may seem like it's important to keep the momentum going, but the best thing you can do in writing is not to write anything at all. If you feel obliged to do so, maybe you can go one step further. So maybe you can start out with the topic, then the subtopics, and then maybe you can outline the topic. An outline will have a lot more detail because it's the structure of the article. It shows the flow and the sequencing. My outlines usually cover these main points, which are: what are we talking about? Why is it so very important? Other questions such as where, when. Then I'll put in some examples, some objections, some mistakes. There's a summary, and then there's a close. But this is how my week runs. A week usually starts off with me writing one or many topics, and then some subtopics. And then I will let a day or two go by, and then I will write the outline. And then another 24 hours will slide before I start to expand the outline into an article. This third part, writing the article itself, takes the most amount of time. If I write an 800-word article, it may take me about 45 minutes. Now, it used to take me 2 days, as you know. But now I can do it in 45 minutes. And if it's a longer article, about 3,000 to 4,000 words, then it might take me anywhere between 3 to 5 hours. But here's the thing. I don't sit down to write everything all at once. I don't go through all the stages all at once. And you shouldn't either. You should break up your writing into bits. There's a very good reason for all of this breaking up. It's called energy. Every step that you do takes up energy. So when I'm cooking, and believe me, I love cooking, just getting the ingredients is a minor mission. Then there is the cutting, the chopping. And this is stuff that I've come to love over the years, but it all takes time, it all takes energy. And anything that takes time also drains energy. But the moment I split up the activity and I come back later, it seems like someone else has done the prep work. And all that is left is to finish it off. Energy needs to be your biggest focus. Time is what we focus on a lot, but hey, you have time, I have time, we all have time. We flop down on the sofa at 7 p.m. and we're not asleep for another 3-4 hours later. So we have time. We just don't have the energy, which is why breaking up your article into bits is what makes it manageable. Writing is an incredibly demanding skill even for an accomplished writer. But there's more to it, and you know this. When you put space between your topics and your outlining, your brain gets a chance to mull over the ideas. While you sleep, your brain is doing its thing. It sorts out the bad ideas, it keeps the good ones. And when you get back to writing, nothing has changed. And yet, something has. But it doesn't stop there. When I go for a walk, I will run the ideas past my wife. And especially on days when I'm really confused, this seems to work well. Even if she is not quite awake at 6 a.m., and mostly she isn't, just voicing the ideas distill it in my brain. There are times, of course, when Renuka will not agree with me, and she'll snap out of her slumber walk and she'll bring out a list of objections. Now, these objections force me to think, to refine the article. And at this stage, I'm still not writing. I'm still on the tightrope between topics and outlines. I'm nowhere close to finishing the article. But eventually, I will go past the topics, past the outline, and then start to write. This article was written in parts as well. I wrote the topics early in the week. Then, on the next day, I wrote the subtopics. Finally, today, and now it's Thursday, is when I'm sitting down to write it. I may fudge a bit, I may try to edit a bit, but mostly the editing needs to be left after you finish the article. I realize that many newbies edit and write at the same time. And this process is very frustrating because you never get to the finish line. As you get better at writing, you realize that the deadline matters. And today, Thursday, is my deadline to finish, but not to edit the article. So I'll finish writing, and then I'll run it through some software edit it, and finally what we've got is a complete article. Now, I might add one more step. I might email a client or a friend whose judgment I trust, and then I will ask them to look over the article. So now I have to wait even longer. This break adds to the pause factor, and so I have time to mull over the ideas until the suggestions come bouncing back. And when they do, there's always some clarity that's needed and some bits that need fixing, which is slightly frustrating, but it almost always makes the article better. When you're just starting out as a writer, you're likely to be amazed at how quickly seasoned writers turn out a finished piece. If I tell you my sob stories about how much time I used to take in the past, it doesn't wash well with you. Your goal is very simple. You want to write faster instead of slaving over that article for hours or even days. You want to get to the finish line, and that's the problem. Instead of trying to write the entire piece, break it up. I know, just thinking of these stages might drive you crazy because you're likely to be thinking, well, who has time to go through all of these steps? And that's the whole point of this section on spacing out your article. You're not taking any more time. You're taking exactly the same time as you did before. You're just spacing it out. So what I do is I'll still take 10 minutes to write the topics and subtopics, and I will on the next day take about 35 minutes to do the outlining. And then on the third day, it'll take me about 45 to 60 minutes to write it. And then the fourth day, it'll still take me 30 minutes to edit it. Essentially, what I'm doing is taking exactly the same time as I used to before, but now using a lot less energy. And so when I'm done, I'm not drained. I'm ready to take on another task. So as I finish that first day's exercise, I'm ready to take on another task. As I finish second day's exercise, I'm ready to take on another task. And to me, that's the biggest joy of all. I feel a deep satisfaction when I complete my article, but I also know that I have the energy to keep doing other work-related tasks. And that feeling is totally different from when I first started writing articles. I used to be exhausted by the end of the article writing exercise. So that is our first lesson. The first lesson is simply to put the space between your article writing. Start out with your topics, your subtopics, do nothing. Go to your outlining, outline it, do nothing. Then go to the third stage and write your article and do not edit. And then in the fourth stage, you can edit or send it to someone else. And finally, your article is ready. It's still taken the same amount of time, but you've saved an enormous amount of energy. You can do other tasks in the day. This may sound like you're just fooling your brain, but you're not fooling your brain. You're allowing your brain to process everything, to mull over things, and that's what makes this stage so interesting. Now, that should have been a great idea by itself, but it's not the only idea, which takes us to the second part. And this second part is about finishing the article. So how do we finish the article? We use a timer. So let's use this timer and let's find out how you can write a lot better and a lot more quickly. Notice how you got all excited when you got your new computer? And there's a reason for that. It's a blank slate. There's practically nothing on the hard drive. And when I got my first Mac, I realized that there was a special section. It was called Downloads. So whenever I started to download something from the internet, the file would go straight into the Downloads folder. When I first got my computer, there were 4 or 5 files in there. When I checked a few minutes ago, there were 74 files in that download folder. And in a month from now, there might be 85 or 100. Give or take a year, and that folder will continue to accumulate junk that I will never look at. In short, the more space I have in that folder, the more I'm likely to fill it with something. The article writing course at Psychotactics is like no other writing course in the world. Well, no other writing course that I know of. So clients who join the live course and this is the live course online, they often have to write about 2 articles a week. The first half of the week is spent on writing the topics and the subtopics, so there's this breaking up. Then it's a day of outlining, and finally it's time to write. The writing stage is when they labor over their work for hours on end. Until 2015, clients would often take 3 or even 4 hours to expand that outline into a complete article. Then in 2016, I gave them a fixed amount of time. The instructions were clear. Every assignment had a finite amount of time, and when the timer went off, they had to stop and they had to submit their work. Even though the participants were given a fairly chunky bit of time, writing is not always very easy, and so you have to write often enough so that the structure becomes second nature. Once that structure is in place, it's relatively simple to complete an article in time. But at the start, most of the clients didn't finish in time. It didn't matter. They still had to submit their work. Once the timer went off, it was like being in an examination hall. You had to hand over your assignment. As you can imagine, this causes a fair level of frustration among the writers. They feel that they need more time to complete their work. They need more time to edit it. They need more time to polish it. And yet, it doesn't matter. If you write to a timer, you are aware that you have to finish before your deadline. So as I'm writing this piece, I know that I have to finish about 1,600 to 2,000 words in the next hour and a half. And then the timer goes off. The timer is an energy saver. But let's do it your way for a change. Let's say that you keep writing until the article is done. And let's assume that journey from start to finish took you 4 hours. Now you're wasted for the rest of the day, aren't you? You took on such a monumental task, but you're completely drained and you're headed towards the fridge to scoop out the remaining ice cream. But if you stopped in about 90 minutes, you'd be tired, but not as exhausted. You would still have to take a break, there's no doubt about that, but you would be ready to go after a little while. Understanding how to manage your energy is a big deal in life. This piece is about article writing, but without a timer, your cake gets burnt, food has to be tossed, and articles are just about inedible. The reason why most writers keep going for hours on end is because they believe that they're improving their article. But I can tell you from years of experience and having read close to a few thousand articles, time doesn't make your article better. If you spend 50% more time on your article, it doesn't improve by 50%. Instead, if you break away, you do yourself a big favor. I had to learn this lesson because I didn't realize the value of a timer. I just looked at the deadline and then I kept working towards it. And the deadline is a mirage. The only thing that counts is a timer. When the timer goes off, you're done. On the article writing course, clients don't get the chance to keep tweaking their articles. Instead, they just get better at writing so that by the time they're done with the course, they're able to write within that time allocated, or at least close to that time allocated. In your world, you may still need to meet that article deadline. Even so, let your article lie unfinished today. Tomorrow, set yourself another timer, then come back, finish the article, give it that spit and polish, and then you're done for this round. People often ask me how I get so much writing done in a week. The answer is not simple because it involves so many factors, but one of the biggest weapons in my armory is the timer. And just to be sure that I don't get distracted, I put Facebook and Gmail on a block, so I can't surf the internet, I can't do anything but write. What you need to do is get yourself a timer. It's hard to believe, it's very hard to believe that a timer can change your writing life, but it will. You will learn to write faster because your timer demands it. And in doing so, your quality will improve. You will have fewer articles in the article writing graveyard, and you will hear the bing, and then you'll get up, and your work is done for the day. And that brings us to the end of this second part. Let's go to the third part, but let's do it in the next episode. What have we covered in this episode? The first thing that we looked at was this factor of splitting up the article. I don't just write the article, I split it up over 5 days. First I'll start with the topic, then the subtopics, then the outlining, then the article itself, then the editing, and then I'll submit. And that's how I go through a single article. It takes the same amount of time, or actually takes a lot less time than if I tried to sit down and do it all at once. When I try to sit down and do it all at once, I'm totally exhausted. My brain hasn't worked out all the details that I need to put in it. And splitting up the article is a huge time saver, but more importantly, it's an energy saver. I feel like someone has gone and chopped the onions and chopped the vegetables, and now I just have to cook it. And then when it's cooked, I just leave it there for a little while, and then later I have to plate it. If I try to do all of it at once, it's very frustrating. And it's very energy consuming and very draining, and I wouldn't advise it. And this is the biggest reason why a lot of writers get stuck. They try to do everything at once. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that most of us write to a deadline and we don't realize the value of a timer. If you say, okay, I've got 1 hour to write this article, you turn on the timer, you turn off Facebook, you turn off Gmail, and you turn off all that stuff, and then in 1 hour, you're done. And you say, but wait, I haven't finished the article, I haven't edited, you're done. What you can do is you can come back the next day and you can clean it up a bit. And you will be amazed at how good you get, how quick you get using this technique of the timer. If we're given endless amounts of hours to get to a destination, we'll just dawdle along the way. But if we're told you have to be there in 1 hour, then somehow we plan and we get there in 1 hour. Is it the perfect trip? No, but over time, it will become the perfect trip. Today, I'm able to write much faster because of that timer, and you will be able to write much faster because of the timer. And even if you don't believe me and you think, well, hey, I don't write like Sean, there are people in the article writing course, people just like you who feel frustrated with article writing, and they go through this process, and none of them would write without the timer. At first, all of them resist, but once they go through the course, they go, where's the timer? And they sit down and they write. And if they forget that habit, they pay the price. So those are the two things that we covered, and we'll wrap up this episode and we'll continue with the next episode. So what's going on in Psychotactics land? Well, we're off to Australia next week because I'm speaking at We Are Podcast, and I have to finish my presentation and I have to do all that stuff, and we have to leave on Wednesday. So yes, there's a lot of pressure out here, a lot of stuff that needs to be finished before we leave. We'll be gone for 2 weeks. It's not a holiday, it's a working situation, just in a different country. As you also know, the article writing course was being sold last week, and we didn't have to wait for more than 16 hours before all the 30 copies were sold out. So yes, it was a home study. Yes, it was a digital version. And yes, we should be selling thousands of copies, but we don't. We sell just 30 copies at a time, and those 30 copies were gone within 16 hours or so. I feel really bad sometimes because I know that there are clients who know me well and they would like to get to the courses, but they don't get there on time. And that's probably one of the downsides of it. But I think that what we're doing is running our business in the way that we want to, with the terms that we want to. And I think that's very important for how you want to run your business, not the way everyone tells you to sell hundreds of copies or thousands of copies. When you think about it, the course itself, it was about $900 at this point in time. It might go up, but it was about $900, and we sold 30 copies. That's 27,000. I don't know about you, but I think 27,000 is quite a lot for a single day's work. The 3-month vacation is not about trying to do these wonderful things all at once. People tell you, okay, you can make $1,000, you can make $3,000, you can get all these clients very quickly. Well, you cannot. It's like throwing a seed in the ground and expecting it to grow overnight. It doesn't work that way. You have to work on it on a daily basis. And you've seen this by listening to this podcast. You see how we have to put out the podcast week after week, how we have to write an article on psychotactics week after week. So it's not this magical thing that most people promise you. And what I would suggest you do is to get to 5000 BC after you've read the brain audit, of course, and then work your way daily, just like brushing teeth. Every day you do a little bit, and that's how you make progress. And this is the thing that a lot of people don't want to do. They want the instant fix, and it's not going to work. So get to 5000 BC, and yeah, that's the place where you want to be with all the rest of the introverts, beavering their way through the whole process of getting your business off the ground and heading towards that 3-month vacation. There's one more thing. On the 15th of October, we're going to sell the pre-sale course. Now, that doesn't have a limit, but it has a limit of just 3 days. So if you get to it on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of October, and it's not cheap, it's about $400, I think, but it shows you how we are managing to sell out all of these courses in 3 hours and 2 hours and 20 minutes. And a lot of people, they think, well, you must have a massive list. We do not have a massive list because we prune our list. We keep cleaning it up, and, it gets to half the list, and then we clean it up again. It gets half of that. And so we work with a very small list, and yet we're able to sell out, and that's what the pre-sale course is all about. So check that out on the 15th of October, 16th and 17th. And of course, if you want to come to New Zealand, there's psychotactics.com/2017. That's it from me, and we'll continue this in the next episode. Bye for now.